Hello, everyone, and welcome to Fashion Coffee Hour. I'm Stanley Smith, and I'm here as always with Marcy Carmack. Marcy Carmack is an expert fashion stylist, and I'm a visual merchandiser, and we're here in Chicago, Illinois. Today, Marcy, we're taking a look at your best friend, Anna.
Anna Wintour.
Marcy has to say it because she has issues with every time I pronounce it wrong. So we're taking a look, and now, Marcy, you said you actually remember Anna from your early time in New York. Is that right?
Yeah, she became editor-in-chief of Vogue in 1988, and that's about the time I went to New York. And but I didn't really become aware of her until 1990, or maybe before that, because she did New York Magazine. She was an editor at New York Magazine. She was also the editor-in-chief of House and Garden, which they didn't talk about today, but she did do that. And so she was the talked about woman around town. And then she started coming to the showroom and to see her out at different places. And somebody yesterday on Clubhouse said, well, was she just, I was talking about how powerful she was, and she said, well, did she just have a dynamic personality? And I was like, well, I didn't really talk to her. I was only in my 20s, although Anna was only in her late 20s or something.
Was she really that young? That's quite
No,
amazing.
maybe, yeah, it is amazing. And actually, maybe it was the early 30s. But
Well, Marcy and I did look at a number of different interviews and tapes and shows, and we're going to talk more about that this evening at the 6 o'clock show. But we did want to share real quickly just some cute little auxiliary information. So Vogue magazine in itself, we were looking at the legacy, really the legacy, tremendous legacy of Vogue magazine, even before Anna arrived.
oh yeah, it's the force in fashion.
And then I was intrigued because Anna's new to me. I'm not really that familiar with her, and I was intrigued because she does have kind of a perception, and I was so charming. I thought it was so charming to find these earlier photographs of her as a young person, growing up in Britain, and I thought it was just fun to see her in some of her younger iterations when she looked. She really was like all of us, a fun young person uh, early on.
Yeah, those photos could be when she was in New York. Yeah, because that looks like the 80s to me.
And she grew up, but she did grow up in England, and she was part of a publishing family. Her father was an editor of Fleet Street newspaper,
The Evening Standard.
Standard.
And she came to New York. She decided she wasn't going to college, so she came to New York to make her mark.
And there's some other early photographs. So you're thinking this probably might be about the time she was in New York, working either for Harper's or for House and Garden.
Yes.
And so she arrived in 1988. This looks very 1980s.
Well, yeah, she didn't arrive in 88. She became the editor-in-chief of Vogue in 88. So I don't know when she arrived, mid 80s, early 80s, but.
And then whenever someone arrives, they always make a mark. And so her first mark was, this is her first cover.
Yeah, I didn't realize it was her first cover, but it was a very important cover.
And you remember this cover, Marcy? I thought that was amazing. That you don't know where you left your shoes, but you remember this Vogue cover. I love that. Like,
yeah,
was that distinctive or that unusual?
Yeah, I don't know. There are certain ones that stick out, and this model's beautiful. And I mean, to me, I wasn't in bed with Coco Chanel at that point. I wasn't part of this whole cult following of Coco Chanel, but that cross is similar to a Maltese cross that she does on her jewelry.
I'm not sure if that is Coco. I thought they mentioned that was Christian Lacroix.
No. I'm just saying.
Oh, that theme,
Coco
that
Chanel
thematic.
does a Maltese cross.
Yes. Well,
and that's partially why I'm drawn to it.
Interesting because they mentioned that when this first was going to print, the printer actually called and asked if it was a mistake. They thought it was so unusual for a Vogue cover. I thought that was interesting.
What did they say?
They just called to make sure it was supposed to be on the cover because they thought it was just a little bit
messy, or what?
This is the whole thing. The jeans, they thought that the ladies' midsection was hanging out. They just thought they were startled by it. They just called to alert the publisher that they were just questioning it, but indeed it was by design. This is the latest issue. You have your copy, you have my copy, and
Yeah.
a little bit more conventional. Then whenever anyone enters the scene, someone exits, and this was Grace Mirabella, who was the publisher just before Anna arrived. Is that correct?
Editor-in-chief. Publisher's the business side.
Okay.
Editor-in-chief's the creative side. So yeah, she had a 10-year run, something like that. And look, that's the 70s with her.
With her Ankh.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. Well, you mentioned publisher, and I think the publisher at the time was Alexandra Lieberman, who hired Wintour.
It's complicated, Stan.
Is
I
it?
know it's like it's
I love complicated.
You weren't in New York,
Well,
but
of course,
Alexander Lieberman had the job that Anna has now. Basically, I don't know what he was the head
of Condé Nast.
editorial art director.
Because I remember him being listed as editor of Vanity Fair during that same period. But then in the interviews we listened to today, they listed him as being the publisher and creative director for Condé Nast. You're right, it is complicated. This is a very big bed, Marcy. There's a lot of people in bed together. But the part that I was curious about, and I will quiz our guest this evening, Alexander Lieberman was also an artist. So he did sculptures, as I believe and recall. Outdoor.
Yeah, well, he did art direction, so they're very similar. Like you doing window displays, there's art involved.
We'd like to think so, Marcy. And then the future Vogue. It's
okay, well,
that.
Wait, hold on a second. I told you this is who people are saying.
Yes.
There's nothing
confirmed. Oh no, I know we're not predicting. We're just discussing.
Ediful. Most people think that he's the next editor-in-chief of Vogue.
Okay, well, you didn't hear it here first. I was so impressed by Anna's portrayal and all the different documentaries and episodes and masterclass series that we looked at today, and that is part of the job of being editors, following the trends and looking for what's on the horizon. So we hope you'll join us this evening at 6 p.m. Central Time on Fashion Coffee Hour when we take a closer look at Anna Wintour. Thank you so much.